The void between stars had always felt like home to Lyra. As the primary navigator of the research vessel Astral Seeker, she had spent more of her life traveling between worlds than living on any one of them. Her species, the Voxen, were known throughout the Synedrian Alliance for their intuitive understanding of spatial mechanics and natural piloting abilities, gifts that had made them invaluable when the Alliance began its great expansion 2 centuries ago. Lyra adjusted her slim frame in the pilot's chair, all 4 of her amber eyes scanning the instrument panel before her. The neural interface nodes on her temples pulsed with a soft blue light as she communed directly with the ship's systems. The Astral Seeker was performing a routine survey of the Cygnus Expanse, a region of space largely considered unremarkable, a perfect assignment for a junior science officer looking to log expedition hours. "Survey sequence Beta 9 complete," she announced, her melodic voice carrying through the small bridge. Nothing but interstellar dust and the occasional microasteroid, as expected. Her research partner, Ket, a bulky Telosian with mottled green skin and a perpetually concerned expression, grunted from his station. "That's the 4th empty sector. We should consider heading back early. There's nothing out here worth documenting." Lyra's mouth twitched in amusement, the bioluminescent freckles across her cheeks brightening slightly. The Admiralty wouldn't be pleased. Besides, the mission parameters were clear: complete survey of quadrants 70 through 83. "The Admiralty is never pleased," Chet muttered, his 4-fingered hands moving clumsily over his console. "And they're not out here wasting their—" A sharp, discordant tone interrupted him, emanating from Lyra's station. Her eyes widened as she instinctively interfaced with the alert system. "Energy spike," she said, her voice suddenly tense. 3 million kilometers, bearing 227 Mark 14. Ket abandoned his complaints and shuffled to her station. "What kind of spike?" "Unknown pattern. It's—" Lyra's voice trailed off as she processed the readings. "It doesn't match any known propulsion system in the Alliance database." The energy signature pulsed again, stronger this time. It wasn't just unusual, it was impossible. The pattern modulated with an organic precision that suggested an intelligence behind it, yet it utilized frequencies that should have canceled each other out. "Bringing it on screen," Lyra said, her fingers dancing across the neural interface. The main view screen flickered to life, showing nothing but empty space. Lyra frowned and adjusted the settings, enhancing the visual spectrum beyond normal parameters. Slowly, a shape began to resolve. A ship, but unlike any vessel she had ever encountered. It seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, its hull composed of interlocking plates that moved subtly, almost like breathing. "That's not possible," Chet whispered, his usual gruffness replaced by awe. "That design, it matches the mythical descriptions of human vessels," Lyra finished, her voice barely audible. Humans. The word itself carried weight, a forbidden topic in many circles of the Alliance. According to the oldest archives, humans had been a warrior species, ferocious and unpredictable. They had fought alongside the early Alliance during the Midnight War against the Scourge, but their methods had been so brutal, so effective, that after the victory, they were politely but firmly asked to isolate themselves from the greater galactic community. That had been over 1,000 years ago. In time, humans had passed into legend, then myth, and finally became little more than cautionary tales told to younglings, stories of beings who could channel their emotion into devastating martial prowess, who could overcome any technological disadvantage through sheer force of will. And yet, if the readings were correct, a human ship was less than 3 million kilometers away. "We need to report this immediately," Chet said, moving toward the communication station. Lyra raised a hand to stop him. "Wait, the protocols for this situation are clear. We need to gather more data before alerting the Admiralty." "Protocols?" "There are no protocols for encountering mythical beings." "Actually, there are," Lyra replied, accessing a deeply buried subroutine in the ship's archives. "Emergency Directive 773 Alpha. It states that in the event of human contact, research vessels are to observe and document only, maintaining maximum distance until. The ship lurched violently, throwing both of them against the bulkhead. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency power. "What just happened?" Ket demanded, pushing himself upright. Lyra scrambled back to her station, interfacing directly with the ship's core systems. "We're caught in some kind of traction field. It's pulling us toward the human vessel. Break free." "I'm trying," Lyra hissed, her fingers moving frantically across the interface. "Engines are at maximum reverse thrust, but we're still being drawn in." The mysterious ship grew larger on the view screen, its dark hull now clearly visible. There was something mesmerizing about its design, functional yet elegant, powerful without being ostentatious. As they drew closer, Lyra could make out symbols etched into the hull, strange, angular characters that the ship's translator couldn't decipher. "Incoming transmission," the computer announced in its flat, emotionless voice. Lyra and Ket exchanged alarmed glances. "Accept," Lyra said after a moment's hesitation. The view screen shifted, and Lyra found herself staring at a face that sent a chill down her spine. It was undeniably human. 2 eyes, a single mouth, skin the color of pale sand. The being had short, dark hair and features that seemed chiseled from stone. But it was the eyes that caught and held Lyra's attention. Gray as storm clouds and just as turbulent, filled with an intensity that seemed to reach through the screen and touch her mind. "Synedrian vessel," the human said, its voice deep and resonant. "You have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Lyra swallowed hard, her throat suddenly dry. The human spoke perfect galactic standard, without a hint of difficulty with the harmonics that most species struggle to master. "I am Senior Navigator Lyra Centaurus of the Synedrian Alliance research vessel Astral Seeker," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We are conducting a routine survey of the region. We didn't know this sector was restricted." The human's expression didn't change, but something shifted in those gray eyes. "This entire system falls under the Arcturus Accord of 2873. No Alliance vessels are permitted within 5 light-years of this location." "The Arcturus Accord," Ket interjected, confusion evident in his voice. "There is no such agreement in our records." A flicker of what might have been amusement crossed the human's face. "Your records have been selectively curated, it seems. I am Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Solaris. Your ship will be brought aboard for inspection, and your crew debriefed. Do not attempt to resist or communicate with your command. It would be unfortunate for all involved." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. "They can't do this," Chet said, his voice rising in panic. "This is a violation of interstellar law. The Alliance will." "The Alliance isn't here," Lyra interrupted, her mind racing. "And if what the human, Captain Chen, said is true, they might not even know where to look for us." The traction beam pulled them inexorably toward the human vessel, which now dominated the view screen. As they drew closer, Lyra realized that what she had initially taken for moving plates on the hull were actually advanced defense systems, constantly shifting and realigning to cover all possible angles of attack. "What do we do?" Chet asked, his usual bravado evaporated. Lyra took a deep breath, attempting to center herself. "We comply. We observe. We learn. Humans aren't supposed to exist anymore, yet here they are. There must be a reason they've revealed themselves now, after all this time." The Astral Seeker shuddered as it was drawn into an enormous docking bay within the human ship. The bay itself was a marvel of engineering, far larger than anything Lyra had seen on even the largest Alliance vessels, with equipment and machinery whose purpose she couldn't begin to guess. As the traction beam released them and the ship settled onto the deck, Lyra saw figures moving toward them. Humans in form-fitting dark uniforms, each carrying what appeared to be weapons. Their movements were crisp, coordinated, and eerily silent. "Remember," Lyra said quietly to Ket as they moved toward the airlock, "we're scientists, not diplomats. Our job is to gather information, not make decisions for the Alliance." Ket nodded nervously, his skin taking on a paler shade of green. "And if they decide to dissect us for their research?" Lyra managed a weak smile. "Then at least we'll have answered the age-old question of whether humans actually exist." The airlock cycled open, revealing Captain Chen flanked by 4 armed guards. In person, he was even more imposing, tall and straight-backed, with a presence that seemed to fill the space around him. His uniform bore insignia that Lyra couldn't interpret, but their placement suggested rank and accomplishment. "Navigator Centaurus," Chen said, inclining his head slightly. "Welcome aboard the Solaris. I apologize for the dramatic nature of our meeting, but circumstances have forced our hand." Lyra stepped forward, conscious of Ket trembling slightly behind her. "What circumstances would those be, Captain?" Chen's expression remained impassive, but his eyes, those storm-gray eyes, seemed to evaluate her, measure her worth in some inexplicable human calculation. "The end of your world as you know it," he replied simply. "And perhaps the beginning of ours again. Come with me. There's much to discuss, and very little time." As Lyra followed Captain Chen into the depths of the human vessel, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. Not for her, not for the Alliance, and not for the humans who had chosen this moment to emerge from the shadows of myth. The reality of humanity, it seemed, was far more complex and dangerous than even the legends had suggested. Captain Chen led Lyra and Ket through corridors that hummed with barely restrained energy. The interior of the Solaris was a stark contrast to Alliance vessels, where Synedrian ships favored organic curves and bioluminescent lighting. The human ship was all clean angles and purposeful design. Every surface, every junction seemed engineered not just for function, but for rapid defense or reconfiguration. They entered what appeared to be a command center, a large circular room dominated by a holographic display showing multiple star systems. Officers moved with quiet efficiency between stations, their conversations hushed and focused. They regarded the aliens with curious glances, but continued their work without interruption. "Your ship's sensors detected our presence," Chen said, gesturing toward a digital representation of the Astral Seeker. "Most Alliance vessels would have missed us entirely. Your personal modifications to the sensor array are impressive." Lyra blinked in surprise. "How did you know I modified the sensors?" A ghost of a smile crossed Chen's face. "We've been monitoring Alliance technological development for centuries. Standard Synedrian sensors can't detect our stealth systems. Yours did. Ergo, modifications. Why would you monitor us if you chose isolation?" Ket demanded, finding his voice at last. "We never chose isolation," Chen replied, his voice hardening. "It was imposed upon us by the High Council after the Midnight War. They feared what we might become if integrated into galactic society." Lyra studied the captain's face, searching for signs of deception. "The archives say the separation was mutual, that humans preferred solitude to rebuild after the war. History written by the victors," Chen said. "Or in this case, by those who feared the victors. Your Alliance manipulated its own historical records, Navigator. Humanity didn't withdraw. We were contained." Chen gestured toward the central holographic display, which shifted to show an ancient battle recording. Massive ships exchanged fire against a backdrop of stars, energy weapons carving paths of destruction through space. "The Midnight War against the Scourge," Chen continued. "Your archives probably describe it as a hard-fought victory for the Alliance, with humans as one of many species who contributed." A hologram zoomed in on smaller craft darting between the behemoths, human fighters, executing maneuvers that defied conventional physics, striking with precision and ruthless efficiency. The reality is that the Alliance was losing, badly, until humanity entered the conflict. The Scourge had adapted to all conventional tactics, but they had never encountered humans before. They couldn't predict us because we're imperfect, irrational, emotional. Ket shifted uncomfortably. So you claim to have won the war single-handedly? No, Chen replied. We fought alongside brave Alliance forces, but our methods disturb your leaders. We didn't just fight to contain the scourge, we fought to annihilate them. And we succeeded, perhaps too well. After witnessing our capacity for warfare, the High Council decided we posed a potential future threat. Lyra's mind raced, trying to reconcile this account with everything she had been taught. If what you're saying is true, why reveal yourselves now? Why bring us aboard your ship? Chen's expression darkened. Because the scourge weren't destroyed. They were dormant. And now they're awakening. The hologram shifted again, showing a distant region of space where strange distortions warped the fabric of reality itself. Dark shapes moved within the distortions, vast and incomprehensible. We call them the Void Heralds now, Chen said. What you knew as the scourge has evolved, grown more powerful in the 1,000 years since the Midnight War. They exist partially in our dimension and partially in another. Your scientists have detected the symptoms of their return: spatial anomalies, subspace disturbances, missing colonies, but they've misinterpreted the cause. The resonance cascade phenomena, Lyra whispered, the pieces falling into place. The Admiralty believes they're natural occurrences. They're not, Chen said flatly. They're incursions, scouts. The first wave of an invasion that will make the Midnight War look like a border skirmish. We've been preparing for centuries, knowing this day would come, but we can't stop them alone. Ket gave a nervous laugh. So you expect us to convince the Alliance to release you from your containment, based on our word and some holographic images that could easily be fabricated? No, Chen replied. I expect you to warn them with proof. He turned to an officer nearby. Commander Reyes, prepare the data package. A woman with dark hair streaked with silver nodded sharply and moved to a console. Moments later, she approached with a small crystalline device that pulsed with internal light. This contains everything we know about the Void Heralds, Chen explained, handing it to Lyra. Their patterns of attack, weaknesses, recommended defensive strategies. It also includes our proposed terms for alliance. Lyra took the device, feeling its weight, physical and metaphorical, in her palm. The High Council won't believe us. Humans are myths, Captain Chen. Even with this evidence, they'll assume it's some kind of hoax or threat from an unknown species. Then we'll have to give them something more concrete, Chen said. You're returning to Synedrian space with an escort. Ket's eyes widened. You're coming with us. A diplomatic envoy, Chen confirmed. Small enough not to appear threatening, large enough to make our point. The Solaris will remain here, but I'll accompany you in a scout vessel with a minimal crew. That's suicide, Lyra protested. The moment an unidentified ship enters Alliance space, defense platforms will open fire. Chen's lips curved in that ghost of a smile again. Your concern is touching, Navigator, but unnecessary. We've been making the occasional visits to Alliance space for centuries. We know how to slip past your defenses. The revelation sent a chill down Lyra's spine. If humans could penetrate Alliance defenses undetected, what else might be lurking in the darkness between stars? Why should we trust you? She asked quietly. Chen considered her for a long moment. You shouldn't, by any rational standard. Our species have been separated for a millennium. You've been taught to fear us, and we've had centuries to nurture resentment. But the Void Heralds don't care about our petty grievances. They exist to consume, to expand, to eradicate, and they're coming for all of us. He stepped closer, and Lyra was struck again by the intensity in his eyes. Not aggression, she realized, but conviction. We need each other, Navigator Centaurus. Humanity brings warfare to levels your people have deliberately forgotten. The Alliance brings numbers and resources we simply don't have. Apart, we both fall. Together, We have a chance. Lyra exchanged a glance with Ket, whose expression had shifted from fear to reluctant consideration. She looked back at Chen, making her decision. I'll deliver your message and escort your envoy, Captain, but I can't promise the Council will listen. Chen nodded solemnly. All I ask is the opportunity to make our case. The rest will unfold as it must. 3 days later, Lyra stood on the observation deck of the Astral Seeker, watching as Chen's scout vessel, the Harbinger, maneuvered into formation alongside them. The human ship was elegant in its deadliness, a predator designed for stealth and precision strikes. We're approaching the Synedrian border, Ket announced from behind her. Last chance to reconsider this madness. Lyra didn't turn from the viewport. Do you believe them? About the Void Heralds? Ket was silent for a moment. The data is compelling. If it's accurate, we're facing an extinction-level threat, but accepting help from humans. I know Lyra sighed. The political implications alone are staggering. 1,000 years of doctrine overturned in an instant. Many won't accept it, regardless of the evidence. And yet here we are, escorting the Bujiman home to meet our leaders, Ket said with a grim chuckle. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the navigation system. Lyra rushed to the console, her heart's racing as she processed the information. Multiple spatial distortions forming directly in our path, she reported, her voice tight. Pattern matches the Void Herald signatures from Chen's data. The comm system crackled. Centaurus. Chen's voice came through clearly. We're detecting Herald activity. Take evasive action immediately. Vector 270 Mark 40. Lyra's fingers flew over the controls, redirecting the Astral Seeker along the suggested course. The research vessel shuddered as its engines strained beyond their design parameters. We can't outrun them, she said, watching as the distortions spread across their path like cracks in reality itself. Our ship wasn't built for combat or extreme maneuvers. Stay on course, Chen instructed. We'll run interference. The Harbinger surged ahead, its engines flaring with blue-white energy. As Lyra watched, the small vessel's hull began to shimmer, plates shifting and weapons systems emerging from concealed compartments. The first of the spatial distortions tore open, revealing what lay beyond. Lyra gasped, her 4 eyes widening in horror. The Void Herald vessel was nothing like the Scourge ships from the historical records. It was a nightmare given form, a writhing mass of dark matter and energy, constantly shifting between states of matter and dimensions. By the Founders, Chet whispered, "That's not a ship. It's alive." The Harbinger opened fire, energy weapons lancing out to strike the Herald vessel. Where the beams connected, the creature's form distorted further, parts of it seeming to fold into another reality before snapping back with violent force. Synedrian Border Patrol will detect this engagement, Lyra said, monitoring the long-range scanners. They'll send ships to investigate. Perfect, Chen replied, his voice calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. Now they'll see the truth firsthand. More rifts opened, disgorging additional Herald vessels. The Harbinger moved with impossible agility, executing maneuvers that should have torn it apart, striking with weapons that seemed designed specifically to damage the interdimensional beings. But it wasn't enough. The Heralds were too numerous, too alien in their thinking to be outmaneuvered by a single ship, no matter how advanced. A tendril of dark energy lashed out, connecting with the Harbinger's port side. The human vessel shuddered but maintained its defensive position between the Heralds and the Astral Seeker. "Captain Chen," Lyra called, watching the Harbinger take another hit. "Fall back. You can't stop them all." "Getting soft on us, Navigator." Chen's voice came back, tight with strain but still carrying that hint of dry humor. "This is what humans do. We hold the line." The Harbinger ignited what appeared to be its final weapon system, a concentrated pulse of energy that tore through the fabric of space-time itself, forcing the nearest Herald vessel back into the rift from which it had emerged. The effort cost them dearly. Secondary explosions rippled across the human ship's hull. Border patrol vessels detected, Chet announced. 3 minutes out. Captain, you need to withdraw, Lyra urged. Your ship is critically damaged. There was a pause before Chen responded. Can't withdraw, Navigator. Drive systems are compromised. But we've accomplished what we came for. The heralds are revealed, and Alliance ships are inbound. Now it's your turn. Lyra understood immediately. The data crystal. Everything the Alliance needs is there, Chen confirmed. Defensive strategies, weapons specifications, communication protocols. Make them listen, Navigator. Make them understand what's coming. The Harbinger drifted into the path of another Herald attack, absorbing damage meant for the Astral Seeker. Its hull integrity was failing, power systems fluctuating wildly. Get clear, Chen ordered. We're initiating self-destruct protocols. The antimatter detonation should create enough of a dimensional disruption to force the remaining heralds back through their rifts. Chen, no. Lyra protested. The border patrol will be here any moment. They can help. Not enough time, and they're not equipped for this fight. Chen cut her off. This was always a possibility, Navigator. Humans understand sacrifice when necessary. Lyra engaged the Astral Seeker's emergency thrusters, putting distance between them and the coming detonation. On the view screen, she watched the Harbinger drive directly toward the largest concentration of Herald vessels. It's been an honor, Navigator Centaurus. Chen's voice came through one last time. Remember what you've seen here. Remember that humanity stands ready to fight alongside the Alliance once more. All we ask is the chance to prove ourselves allies rather than myths. The communication ended. Moments later, the Harbinger erupted in a blinding flash of energy that warped the very fabric of space around it. The shockwave hit the Astral Seeker like a physical blow, sending the small research vessel tumbling end over end, despite the distance Lyra had put between them. When the sensors finally cleared, the heralds were gone, driven back through their rifts by the dimensional disruption. The Harbinger was completely destroyed, leaving only scattered debris and a lingering distortion in space where it had made its last stand. The Alliance border patrol vessels arrived minutes later, surrounding the Astral Seeker with weapons charge, standard procedure for unexplained combat scenarios near Synedrian space. Research Vessel Astral Seeker, this is Border Command. A stern voice announced over the comm. You will power down and prepare for boarding. Explain the nature of the spatial anomalies we detected. Lyra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the data crystal in her pocket and the even heavier weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Chen and his crew had sacrificed themselves to deliver this warning. She wouldn't let their deaths be meaningless. Border Command, this is Senior Navigator Lyra Centaurus, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. I am declaring a Priority 1 emergency under Protocol 773 Alpha. The humans have returned, and they bring warning of a threat greater than anything the Alliance has faced before. There was a long silence from the patrol vessels before the response came, hesitant and disbelieving. Say again, Astral Seeker. Did you say humans? Lyra looked at Ket, who nodded grimly in support, then back to the viewport where the last traces of the Harbinger's sacrifice still shimmered against the darkness. Affirmative, Border Command. Humans are real, not myths. And right now, they may be the only hope the galaxy has against what's coming. As the patrol vessels moved to escort them back to Alliance space, Lyra gazed out at the stars, wondering how many other legends might be waiting in the darkness between them. And how many nightmares. One thing was certain, the galaxy she had known her entire life had changed forever. Humanity had returned from myth to reality. Now it remained to be seen whether the Alliance would embrace their ancient allies or reject them once more, and whether either species would survive the choice.